Our speaker tonight is Mr. Ossie Davis. Ossie Davis is without a doubt one of the more influential blacks at communicating ideas. His work over the years has in a meaningful way penetrated our institutional concepts. He has with extraordinary effectiveness utilized man's human trait to influence his fellow man, to place meaningful ideas within his grasp. His influence is not limited to the black community alone, but Ossie Davis's ideas have permeated the larger society. His concern has been with the quality of life. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ossie Davis.
Thank you, Congressman Clay. Ladies, gentlemen, brothers, sisters, and friends, this is an historic occasion, a moment we have dreamed and worked and fought for longer than we ourselves have been alive. The light that kept our fathers and our mothers tuned in to possibilities of a better future when they were slaves, the insights they gleaned, the hopes they hoped, the prayers they prayed, have come one step closer to being answered by what you have collectively done by your presence here tonight. I have been told that there are 2,800 of us here, and we occupy facilities which were meant for 2,400. That's a pretty good indication of what price we place on our freedom and on the men and women who are dedicated to fighting for it. You might have wondered why I, who am an actor and a performer, among other things, was chosen to give the keynote address tonight, and I myself, when called upon to do so, had moments of hesitations and doubts, and I wondered why choose me for such an important task. I guess the one reason which makes sense is that I represent that aspect of black culture which began in Africa with the storytellers and came down to the great rhetorical giants who have stirred us by their words in the past. But I think the time has perhaps come when rhetoric will begin to take a back seat, when action. And I was so stirred by that possibility that I decided tonight to give my few remarks a subject, a title, a text, which I want you to listen to very carefully. The text is very simply, it's not the man, it's the plan. And for those of us who need more explicit information, those of us still caught up in the dreams that rhetoric will solve our problems, let me state it another way. It's not the rap, it's the map. We have been blessed in our past with many great leaders. Leaders whose qualifications have been proven by what they did and what they said, and even by the fact that when the time came, they didn't hesitate to give their lives. And their dedication and their hard work has been born fruition, bears fruition by where we are tonight. And I don't call for a moment of silence and gratitude for what the fathers has given us, but we shouldn't go forward without remembering that we are a continuous chain. We celebrate tonight, but we don't celebrate the past, we celebrate the future. And if anybody has a right to celebrate the future, I'm sure that we must be that particular people. We have had great leaders in the past who have stirred us with their words, with their hopes, and with their dreams. I remember coming to Washington in 1963 when Dr. Martin Luther King stood at the Washington Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial, and he said to the world and to the Congress and to the nation, "I have a dream." Now, that dream of 1963 was not realized then. It was not realized at the time of his death, and it has not been realized now. At the time when Dr. King died in 1968, he was in the process of organizing his forces and calling upon his people to come one more time to Washington, D.C. And I have a feeling that had he come that time, he would not have said, "I have a dream." He would have said, "I have a plan." And I feel that that plan that he had might have made the difference. You know, it might do us good to examine what some of the plans our previous leaders have had actually were. And perhaps it's a great misfortune that we never had a chance to get from them, either individually or collectively, just what the plan was that they had in mind. And that's why tonight the burden of my appeal to you, to the 13 Congressional Black Caucus members, to give us a plan of action. Give to us a 10 black commandments, simple, strong, that we can carry in our hearts and in our memories no matter where we are, and reach out and touch and feel the reassurance that there is behind everything we do a simple, moral, intelligent plan that must be fulfilled in the course of time, even if all of our leaders, one by one, fall in the battle. Somebody will rise and say, "Brother!" Someone will rise and say, "Our leader died while we were on page 3 of the plan. Now that the funeral is over, let us proceed to page 4. You know, what we call for is not without precedent. When Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt, they had to wander around for a long time in the wilderness trying to get it together. In fact, it took Moses 40 years and a stone tablet beating them in the head every day trying to make Jews out of them. If it took Moses, with God's direct help, 40 years, certainly we can give ourselves a few more days to get our thing together. But Moses did have the plan, and Moses took the plan and he taught it to the children as best he could. And that's what we need from our leaders now, from our noble 13. We need that they think the problems out, that they investigate the possible solutions, that they codify their results, and they present their program to us, the people, so that we may ratify what they have thought and organized and left to us as a program of action. Now, we need a plan because we stand at a dangerous but exciting junction of history. We might remind ourselves tonight that we are at a spot where the Irish were some 100 years ago. The Irish had the distinction, of course, of being the niggers of their day, and they responded rather angrily and violently to that classification. I don't know if you were around in 1863, but in July of that year, the Irish pitched a dinger in New York which cost the lives of 1,000 people. Now, Life magazine has given us the credit of having created the biggest riot in the United States, but they forgot that in 1863, there was a riot in New York where over 1,000 people died. At that time, in the mines of Virginia, the Irish were so embittered by the treatment they received that they blackened their faces and put on women's clothes and went into the mines and they blew them up and they shot people and they hung people. They did all kinds of bad things. The Molly Maguires wrote a quite considerable chapter in our history, and not all of it was nonviolent. But the Irish had to learn an additional factor before they were able to walk into the promised land, and that factor was that it wasn't enough just to be violent. The Irish had to have a plan. And they had their plan, and they got it together in a little town called Boston. They got their thing together, they planned it out, and they said to themselves, now look, there's a lot of us Irishmen here in Boston, a whole lot of us. And we've been petitioning the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants for years about better schools and better houses and jobs and the drug problem and the drinking problem and what we're going to do for the future. And we don't get no response from them. So why don't we Irishmen get together and put our votes in one place and see what we can do if we take power at City Hall? And do you know that that's exactly what they did? They put their votes together according to the plan, and they came up with one man, the first Irish Catholic mayor of Boston, whose name was John Fitzgerald. And you can see where I'm heading, because that's the first two names of the first Irish Catholic president, who was his grandson, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Now, if it happened to the Irish, who certainly don't represent 25 million people, why can't it happen to us? But the Irish had a plan. They thought it out, and they got all the Irish together, and they said, we're going to knock heads, and we're going to wield shillelaghs until we get one solid body of Irish opinion. And we might think tonight that we are at that particular juncture. And in some degrees we are. We have become hip to the meaning of political power, and that's why we're here. This is an exercise in power tonight. We've eaten a good meal, we've paid good money for it. We've had good fellowship, we've heard good music and entertainment. But brothers and sisters, the name of the game is power. And if you ain't playing power, you're in the wrong place. Now, but at this particular juncture in history, the Irish example is not nearly quite enough, because the circumstances in which we live in our society, economically, socially, politically, have qualitatively changed from what they were even 20 years ago. And it is that change which makes our fight different and vital. And any plan that we make must take in account of the facts of that particular change that happened in American society. Well, I refer very simply to a very simple but profound phenomenon which has affected our people more than anybody else. To make it clear, let me go back in history a little. We came to this country not of our own free will. We came over in the boat as slaves. We became slaves in the South and in the North, and that was our designation and that was our station. And no matter what you might say against slavery, how much you might abhor it, As an economic system, slavery did have one advantage. It had 100% job security. Now, I see you're beginning to get the message. Well, when we had the Second American Revolution in the 1860s and we wiped out slavery, we changed the title of our labor, but we didn't change the constitution of it very much. We stopped being slave labor, but we became cheap labor. And all of the jobs that nobody else wanted to do were the jobs that were ours by right. We had a right to the dirty jobs. Nobody could keep us from cleaning out the John. Nobody stood between us and cooking the grits for Miss Ann in the morning. Nobody stopped our PhDs from hustling baggage down at the Pennsylvania station. All of the dirty jobs, the hard-working jobs, the unskilled jobs were ours. All of the jobs at the bottom of the pile were ours. And as long as we were content to stay at the bottom, there was a place for us in America, economically, politically, socially, and otherwise. And sometimes when we forgot that place, there was a cadre of friends of the black people called the Ku Klux Klan, whose job was to remind us what our place was and to put us back there, our place on the bottom. But however horrendous that place was, it did offer us some kind of economic purchase in our country. And out of those small jobs that we did have, we could send our children to school. We could build our churches, support our newspapers, organize our social clubs. It wasn't much we had, but what little we had did help us keep going as a people. But a strange thing has happened to the economy of our country, and it's happened very quietly and over a short period. I understand that 4 years ago, 95% of the cotton in Mississippi was picked by machines. And when you consider that we were brought to this country to pick that cotton, we were tied to that cotton culturally, economically, socially, politically, consider what the implication of that single fact is. 95% of the cotton in Mississippi was picked by machines. What happened to those black folks who used to pick that cotton? What became of them? Half of them stayed on the plantation and rotted. The other half came north, and you will find them now in the central cities, and that is the source of one of the problems we face, and this is one of the problems which we must solve. What I'm trying to say is that, ladies and gentlemen, among our people, out of every 4 jobs in the past, 3 has been in the classification of unskilled, the rough, the jobs that required very little education. Those 3 jobs out of every 4 are the natural targets of the automation and mechanical revolution by which this country now produces more and more goods every year with the use of less and less manpower. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the black man and woman and the black family stands directly in the path of automation and the mechanization of our economic life in this country, and this is an irreversible process. The end results of it now you see on the welfare rolls in our cities. In New York, 1 out of every 5 citizens is on welfare. Now you may think that somehow we'll come up with a solution and solve the problem and one day eliminate welfare, but I doubt if that is true. I think the whole process is one way, that welfare is this society's answer to its economic dislocation, to its endemic unemployment, for which it has no solution, nor the determination or the will to find a solution. If the masses of black people who at least did have a place on the bottom of society now suddenly find that even that place is denied us, what recourse have we except what you find already in the inner cities? The fires of rebellion are burning brightly because human beings can only be repressed and ignored and maltreated for so long. Then they must rise. What is the response of the black people in our inner cities to this endemic unemployment? What happens to our youth who suffer from 25 to 50% unemployment? Some of them take to drugs. Some of them take to crime. Some of them apply themselves and say the solution to the problem is education. The solution is preparing ourselves to deal with an automated society, to deal with a computerized economy. There are others who say that the society has no alternative, nothing to give me but a tour of duty in Vietnam. Still others say the only recourse is revolution, to change the society in any means we can before the society decides that because we are expendable and black and poor and dejected and despised, that they would rather see us in the ovens of Dachau than solve the problems as rational men. I do not say that the society is already organized to exterminate black people, by no means. I say that we must from now on begin to consider all possibilities and to prepare for all eventualities ourselves. If, when the other immigrants came to our society, they at least had the hard jobs to do, the ditches to dig, the baggage to hustle, the docks to wallop, the immigrants who came, the Hungarians, the Jews, the Irish, the Germans, these are the people who came into and could work in the ditch, could find the hard work, could make enough with their hard work and their labor so that their children could climb on their backs into the outer society, that if we still had that opportunity, we would do likewise. But what I'm trying to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is that those ditches that they dug are no longer diggable, that the economy which they fed no longer needs that kind of labor, and that even though we now have on our law books many, many more rules and regulations regarding the freedom of the black people, until we can solve the economic problem of how we get around the fact that people do not climb up as groups in American society by digging ditches anymore, we are in serious trouble. It may be, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, that you may be called upon to prove once and for all that work is an outmoded commodity in America, that men deserve dignity and an income and a definition as valuable citizens whether they have a job or not. It may be that you will have to define work, citizenship, ownership, and property in a totally brand new light. That may be your assignment. That may be what history requires of you. Brothers and sisters, I repeat, it's not the man, it's the plan. We've had great leaders, and we love them, we admire them, and they brought us where we are. But rhetoric will not do it now. Rapping alone will not make it. What we need from you, our honored leaders, and I choose the word advisedly, our honored leaders, what we need from you are your best thoughts, your sincerest dedication, the long thoughts. We need from you a reassurance that there is a new political alignment even in the black community now. We no longer elect our leaders by the value we find that they bring to us or the goods they can bring to us from the white community. We elect leaders who represent what we are and what we can do. And if we can spend $250,000 on a dinner here, there's a lot that we can do. I think, for instance, that the Black Caucus should have a dinner like this in every major city where blacks are gathered. I think it would be good if they went into the communities as a group to be seen by the black people so that the blacks in all areas and all cities can participate as you participate here tonight. Let me say in closing that though I look at the economic structure of our society and I see the unemployment figure creeping higher so that even now executives face an unemployment rate of 6%. And I know what that means in the black community. Though it is dire, though we see drug addiction, we see our inner cities decaying, we see the imminent collapse of much that we've held dear, still, black congressmen, you are not without power, even at this moment. When you consider that every Monday morning, the preachers in Harlem bank $1,500,000. Maybe you black congressmen might say to the preachers, brothers, it's time for you to put all that money in a black bank somewhere. When you consider that in the course of a year in my own Harlem community, again, $1,100,000 will be spent by churches and social organizations on banqueting facilities downtown, you may say to them, let us build our facility uptown. Let us spend our money among ourselves. And think of this simple little thing here. There is one firm in New York that does the printing for the churches on Sunday at the cost of $250,000 a year. One white firm servicing all the black churches. $250,000, leaving the community never to come back. I think our 13 congressmen might have some solutions as to what we should do about things like that. I, for instance, personally need help on a problem that I have. I directed a motion picture called Cotton Comes to Harlem, which has grossed up to date $6,500,000. I appreciate your applause, but wait till you hear what the problem is. Now, 60 to 70% of the money that went across the box office came from black people. Money that came from the Harlems of all our cities, the Harlems of all our country. Money that goes to Hollywood and it's one way, it ain't coming back. I have been instrumental in helping not rob exactly, helping borrow from my people money that we need in our own community. I need your help in structuring a way so that when the money goes to Hollywood, it only stays for a little while. It doubles and comes back to the black community. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I think I've said enough. There's much that could be talked about tonight, but we are here. And the fact that we are here is itself eloquent. This is a dinner that could have served without a single word, because we know the historical significance of just sitting, looking, talking to each other, of what this moment means. And if you think that there are others who don't know what this moment means, you should be somewhere where the listening devices are tuned up very high. But all I'm saying to the world, all I'm saying to that cadre of black leadership that we have, that we want a plan. We want a plan so simple, so easy to remember that we carry it in our heads, so that if the storm of oppression should wipe us all out but one family, and that family was crouching somewhere in the dark, one brother would reach out to another and say, hey man, what's the plan? Let us stop making history by ad hoc methods and by impromptu improvisations. Let us plan the whole thing out and give everybody his assignment and hold him strictly responsible if he doesn't carry it out. That's what it calls for. We are capable of doing it, and now is the time to do just that. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't imagine a better way to end my talk session than by calling for and presenting to you now a young man who has made not only a name for himself, but for those of us who care about things of the spirit, those of us who care that our genius for insight, wit, love, and laughter has caught fire in the person of this one young man. You know him, you love him, as I do too, and it's a great honor to all of us and a pleasure for me personally to introduce to you, or to present to you rather, Mr. Bill Cosby.
Good evening. Good evening. It's showtime now. I always have reservations about these dinners because somehow we're not far removed from church, and that we all come here to hear the speaker, a man such as Mr. Davis, who so brilliantly covered everything. I think that all you niggas need to check yourselves out. I think you're scared to hold this kind of a convention at the Dunbar Hotel. I think that what you worked so hard to buy and put on your back is not worth the Dunbar Hotel. I mean, after all, who would notice you? It's like church because I feel that while you're here, you'll say right on, and 2 hours later after you're outside, it'll be right off. So I say good evening, niggas, because that's what a lot of you are going to be when you leave this room. And I mean the white people sitting there too. Niggas come in all colors. If you think I'm lying, ask Martha Mitchell tomorrow morning. I'm going to support the caucus as long as I live. I may not be an entertainer. I may just be someplace trying to get my family together. I'm going to support them because the establishment, the black establishment, for too long has been the entertainers. And black entertainers very seldom get a chance to enjoy what the white entertainers have. That is, to be able to go out on the Riviera with sunglasses and float around on a raft. No, because you know, if you saw a picture of me out there on the raft with my sunglasses on, you say, look at that nigga, and we up here struggling. You wouldn't even give me a chance to tell me that I was floating on that raft for y'all. Now, I know it's warm in here. And a lot of you, after your meal, did the natural thing, took a nap. But we're going to entertain you. So I want all the men, if they feel so, please take your jacket off and loosen up your tie. Doesn't make any difference what you look like when you leave here, because you know what they're going to say about us anyway. At a time like this, I think also a moment that's so important, because we may never do this again. That's how good we stay together. So there's a lot of we gonna do this and we gonna do that and we gonna, and then when you go home you say, well, can you make the next? Oh no, man, I made the last one. But the entertainers still entertain. And the people still have to get an ass kicking to go out and vote. So I'm saying to you this evening, this is very, very serious. People are not going to sing for you for nothing. Politicians are not going to stand up here again in Group of 13. I wish they'd dance, because I want to see which one didn't have rhythm. But you know where you are. I watched all of you. I watched you when Congressman Diggs stood up here and made a speech, and you started filling your mouth with nourishment. And you're just busy talking. There's some niggas out there took some other people's tables. They did it to my wife one time. We went out there to the Urban League football game. Because we didn't show up at 8 o'clock, we had $7 tickets. Cat with a $2 ticket said, the game started at 8:30. You ain't here at 8:30, you move, you lose. Yes, we're together. All of you are together. Ain't but one person together, and that's Ossie Davis, just left here, poured his heart and soul into a beautiful speech so you can make the sign, give a half-hour handshake to each other, and then walk out and still be a nigga. You got to tighten up your ship. Tighten up your game. Because it just doesn't end here. And you don't need speakers every day to tell you who you are and where you have to go and who's cheating you. You have to stop blaming people. You ain't blaming the Jew who owns the store unless we should go over there and take his store over, because there ain't but 7 of you in this place can run a store. With a moment like this, I don't know how many of you brought your children. Leave them at home so they won't know anything about what you saw tonight. And how many of you are going to tell your children about what you saw tonight or what happened? Only thing that we can remember, because we were kids listening to Joe Louis knock people out. You understand what I'm saying? And somehow our children will still believe that you get to be a doctor by being on television. That an architect has to be white to draw buildings. It's got to start with the young too. Our young. Kids taking dope today. They were taking it yesterday. Only reason why everybody knows about it now is because white kids are involved heavily. Ray Charles can't make the money he used to make because Joe Caucus is doing it. Can't blame white people. It's because who are you looking at? Who are you paying your money to support and see? So when you leave here, depends on just how long it's going to take you before you go back to being a nigger. I'll be here next year. I'll be here for every caucus that ever exists, even if they only have one. I want to now tell you that my children are in school, and they get me in a lot of trouble, mainly because they're so outspoken. School they're in teaches them that if they smoke, they're going to die of cancer. Kids don't know when to stop. They go around and tell anybody, see you smoking, you're going to die. You're going to die. They sing a song to you, you're going to die. I was driving my car, pulled up to a light, guy pulled up beside me smoking a cigarette. My daughter started singing, you're going to die. The guy looked over and said, oh my God, Panthers. Now the band can't laugh because you're being paid tonight. Every time you see musicians at a benefit, they are being paid. I'm gonna pull the covers off these dudes. This is the strongest union in the world. If they had to play a benefit for the United States of America, they would be paid. So you don't laugh. Now wait a minute, you gotta look at this band now. No, wait a minute, wait, just take a look at the band. Now, it is a proven fact that all black people have rhythm. Look at the drummer. Now that's what I call integrating. We have done it tonight. Sir, I hope your licks are good. All right, we're going to start it and get it on here because it is running late. We're way past CP time. And you're really late when you run past that.